Hello all, welcome back to Consciousness Rising. It's good to be back again making these videos. I've got a new microphone, hopefully my sound quality will be a bit better. It wasn't terrible before, but I was never really fully happy with it. I've got a nice condenser mic now, so what that'll mean in the future, in fact, is actually that I'll be starting to put out what I've been wanting to do for ages, which is EFT meditation videos, which I'm going to do with backing music and try and make them quite professional. And you can sort of meditate along with them, tap along with them, and yeah, now that I've got a better mic, I should be able to do that. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Today's episode I've been wanting to get out for a while, because although there's a lot of YouTube videos and channels and BitChute and this, that and the other on narcissism. Now, what they tend to be, I've looked at quite a lot of them, and I'm not knocking a lot of them because some of them are good, but what they tend to be is looking at it from the perspective of a victim of a narcissist. Now that is very, very important. However, as you know, if you've watched any of my videos, that they're deeply rooted in psychology, and what I'm actually going to look at here is what causes narcissism. I'm much more interested in that, because it really is the root causes that we have to go to in order to solve a problem. As I said, though, I have worked in therapy with lots of people that are victims of narcissists, and you know, that is important as well. But this video is not really so much about that. It's more to do with the roots, what causes it. Because this is not something any of us are free of. We all have slight narcissistic traits occasionally, especially in childhood. But also, I know quite a lot of adults that display this quite a lot. And, you know, a lot of it comes from damage. I'm going to talk through these slides anyway, and it's much more, like I say, to do with the psychological roots. Yeah, so I'll get on with that. So, one thing, the book on the left is just called Narcissism, and it's written by Alexander Lowen, and it is an absolute masterpiece. I read it cover to cover, like I couldn't put it down, and it really is, for my money. I mean, I've read other things on narcissism, but this one, again, the reason I love it so much is because Lowen, and I'm going to do more on Lowen in the future, because he really is an important figure, because he was one of the people that really brought therapy into the body. You know, as much as it is a mind thing, and, you know, Freud and Jung and people like that, Adler and people that come before, they were very good, you know, but a lot of their theories were based in the mind, which are important. But what Lowen does is he blends the two, and he says he brings it into the body. Now, I've done videos on this before anyway, so a lot of what this slide is about, this slideshow is coming from directly from this book, because it's brilliant. Okay, so as I've put there are actually two ways in which narcissism is expressed, and there's actually a positive use. People sort of, they think it's all a negative thing, and mostly it is, but there is a positive use of narcissism. And the second part is the one that most people talk about, which is the pathological narcissism. Now, that's when you're affecting other people. It really is just the difference between inner self and affecting other people. If your narcissism isn't affecting other people, then it's not really, it's, you know, it's the difference between white, you know, light and dark magic, really. It's a bit like Crowley said, that all light magic and correct use of magic should be to do with bettering the self, and that's why I look at psychology so much, because these things are linked. When you're using it in a pathological way to control others or to harm others, then it's black magic. So it really is that simple. Now, moving on, I'm going to show you Muhammad Ali. Perfect example of someone who appeared to be very egotistical, but actually, I actually like Muhammad Ali a lot. He displayed positive narcissism, and what it is rooted in is truth. Now, he, you know, you see videos of him, they're quite comical actually, you know, saying I'm the greatest and this, that and the other, but the man proved his worth. He was the greatest. He was the greatest boxer of his time. So in a way, that, as I've put there, positive narcissism is rooted in truth, and it's knowing one's greatness. Look, we all have greatness. It's been drowned out of us. We're such a race that hates ourselves, and we don't want to, we're so frightened to appear egotistical, but actually that's heroic. Muhammad Ali was a heroic character. just like Bruce Lee was as well. You know, there's many people you can think of this. You know, it's rooted in truth. He was the greatest. It's knowing one's greatness. You're not affecting other people, but you're just knowing how damn good you are. It's confidence instead of grandiosity. It's not grandiosity and it's not fake. It's truth. And people don't have a lot of confidence today, and we need a bit more positive narcissism, if anything. So that is really summed up there perfectly by him. I think he was a great archetype for that. Okay. John Bradshaw goes on to talk here about positive narcissism as well. He says, we needed our mothering person to take us seriously, to affirm that every part of us was acceptable, to let us know that someone would be there for us no matter what. These needs comprise what Alice Miller calls our healthy narcissistic supplies. They consist of being loved as the very one that you are, being admired and valued, being touched and treated specially, being certain that mother will not leave you, being taken seriously. When we get those needs met in childhood, we don't have to carry them around when we grow up. Okay? Pretty much affirming what I said at the beginning and have said in previous videos, I'm sure, that actually narcissism is very healthy and natural for children. Very natural. It's part of learning who they are. And if these needs are not met in childhood, as we'll go on to discuss, that's why they, you know, manifest in these negative, not very nice ways. So that's a brilliant quote. And again, you know I promote this book so much, but it really is a powerful, powerful book. And he says here, adolescents are narcissistic. They are obsessed by their own reflection in the mirror. They can spend hours looking at themselves. This flows from their intense self-consciousness. It is also a recycling of their early narcissistic needs. Okay, so those needs in childhood, as you grow up and you become a teenager, you become more self-aware, they start to recycle themselves. You're becoming much more aware of who you are. You're aware of your self-image. You're trying to fit in and all those things that we know, you know. And yeah, again, another great quote. And that book, again, is so good. It's so good. It teaches you so much about life and also your past. Now, just dipping into Alexander Lowen's book here, he actually states that there is a spectrum of narcissism. Okay, so he actually gives 5 types of narcissist. So, and that's what's so good about reading that book, because he really breaks it down. There are different types and different ways that it manifests, and he calls them these. He calls them the phallic narcissistic character, the narcissistic character, so it's just plain narcissistic character, the borderline personality, that's an interesting one, the psychopathic personality. Now, I've done things on psychopaths, I think it was episode 6 way back then, and the paranoid personality. So he's saying that there's this broad spectrum actually of narcissism and how he sees it, and he's so right about this. And he goes on in the book, he'll give you examples of these, but he's give this chart here, and I really want to talk about this because it's really interesting. So at the top there in orange, you've got those different types. Okay, in the middle you've got the symptoms, and they're the symptoms of narcissism. Okay, so you've got degree of narcissism, grandiosity, what I said before, lack of feeling, and that's really important. We're going to go on to talk about that in a minute. Lack of sense of self and lack of contact with reality. They are the biggest symptoms he sees in narcissism. And if you'll notice there, it is a spectrum. So the phallic narcissistic character is actually the lowest. It's the least narcissistic out of all the other characters. Then you've got the narcissistic character, the borderline personality, psychopathic, obviously, and the paranoid personality. So he's probably talking about paranoid schizophrenics there. And in them, you know, all those things, the degree, the grandiosity, lack of feelings, sense of self, contact with reality is at its highest. So there is this spectrum to be aware of. And there are other psychologists as well who even say there are more than that. But I like Lowen's work so much that I think he's a very good guide for this. So he's saying, yeah, there's 5 different types, and the more narcissistic you are, you know, if you're a paranoid personality, all those traits are going to be extremely high. That person will have no lack of low sense of self. They will have hardly any contact with reality. They won't feel much in their body or in their emotional state. They'll be so grandiose, and their degree of narcissism will be the highest, whereas in the phallic it's actually the lowest. Okay, so that's, a lot of people are probably phallic narcissistic characters, because it's quite low in them. Again, pathological, what we're talking about is, he actually says that there's 3 main ways that it manifests itself, and it is in the denial of feeling, the loss of self, and the projection of an image to compensate for the loss of self. And as I've put there, this is where people get it so wrong. They see a narcissistic person, they go, God, he's full of himself and he loves himself. No, that is the projection. And as I've put there, narcissism appears as self-love, but at its root, it is actually self-hate. If you really peel back the layers, you're dealing with a very damaged individual. And they need healing. And they can be healed. It takes work and it takes willpower, therapy, different things you can do. But it can be healed. And as we'll see as we go along, it's often rooted in childhood. Okay, so that's the 3 ways. So they deny their feelings. They don't have a sense of self at all. And they project an image. So, whether that's, I'm so great, look at me, look how, I often think of people that work out a lot. And not everyone that works out is a narcissist, obviously, but I imagine it's quite rife in people like that, because it's like they're compensating for something, aren't they? I want to have massive muscles so I feel good about myself, because inside I don't know who I am. That's basically how it works. I'm going to break them down a bit here. So, denial of feeling. It's important to note that narcissism finds its roots in early childhood trauma, which can result into the denial of feeling. And as I've put there, and I've said before in many videos, children are suppressed because they have been oppressed. Whenever a child has had to suppress its feelings, its emotional state, it's done by an oppressive person. Usually a parent, but often a teacher or someone in a club or whatever. Older children can do it to younger children. But yeah, this denial of feeling, and Lowen talks a lot in his book about the denial of feeling and how that leads to damaged individuals. And he said the way that children do it, and it happens on a very unconscious level, is that they hold their breath. They actually hold their breath. Now, when he pointed this out in one of his books, I'm trying to read all of his books at the moment, so he's got about 14 books. It's taken me a while. He said about some of us unconsciously hold our breaths in certain situations, and I actually will tell you that I caught myself holding my breath when I drive, and he states in his book that that's quite common. Don't know why I do it, but I sort of caught myself doing it. And when we don't breathe, we don't feel, because with the breath, they say spirit is breath, don't they, comes the feeling. So children, when they don't want to feel shame or guilt or whatever, they'll hold their breath unconsciously. So I thought that was really interesting. Maybe that's a good piece of advice from this video. Look at ways in which you might be holding your breath when you're doing something, and then sort of ask yourself why. There might be a reason for it. Denial of feeling. Power and control. He goes on to talk about here. He says all narcissists strive for power and control. However, not all people with power are narcissists. So just because you don't get on with your boss might not mean that your boss is a narcissist. He might be. He or she. They might not be. But some people are in power and they're just genuinely nice people. They've just got into that position. But narcissists really crave power because they feel weak. You see, it's an overcompensation again. Alexander Lowen also states that the 2 emotions that are the most inhibited in the childhood of a narcissist are sadness and fear. When they feel sadness and fear, they feel they are vulnerable states, as I've put at the bottom. The last thing a narcissist wants is to feel vulnerable, you see. And that is why they create this inflated projection of the self, because they don't want to feel that vulnerable. None of us like to feel vulnerable in that way, do we? So you can work, if you really think about this, it really does state that they're damaged individuals. I'm not denying that they don't do harm, because they do. And I've heard some horrific stories over the year. They go on, some narcissists do horrendous abuse to people. but it comes from somewhere. They're not born like that, you know. And yeah, sadness and fear, they inhibit that. They don't want to feel that, so because they don't want to feel vulnerable, so they create this image, you know, this ego image, and then that's not really who they are inside. And this is the last slide. Not a very long video, but I think I've got to the point quite quickly here. We are talking about the roots here, and it's not something I see explored enough, so I'm hoping I've sort of cleared that up a bit. So Lowen says here, all of us are vulnerable to being hurt, rejected or humiliated, yet not all of us deny our feelings, try to project an image of invulnerability and superiority, or strive for power. Some of us, it's all down to our resilience. We'll be hurt, rejected, humiliated, but we won't project that image. We won't form an image, because we won't deny the feelings, so we'll feel the feelings. And that's where therapy can help. And often, one of the first things I do with people is get them in touch with their feelings. Some people don't even, you know, they don't understand their feelings. They don't understand, and that's where I'll use things like mood cards, because so many people are out of touch with their feelings, unfortunately. That's leading to a lot of narcissism in the world. A lot. So yeah. Okay, he says the difference... Sorry, I'm going to read that again. So all of us are vulnerable to being hurt, rejected or humiliated, yet not all of us deny our feelings, try to project an image of invulnerability and superiority, or strive for power. The difference lies in our childhood experiences. As children, narcissists suffer what analysts describe as a severe narcissistic injury, a blow to self-esteem that scars and shapes their personalities. This injury entails humiliation, specifically the experience of being powerless while another person enjoys the exercise of power and control over one. Parents. So many parents, as I've pointed out in my previous videos, especially the one on Alice Miller, do this to their children. They humiliate them. They make them feel shame for things that they really shouldn't feel shameful for. They suppress their natural desires. And we wonder why the world is in such a state that it is. Narcissism is actually rife. I actually see it everywhere. And it's because we are a damaged race. We need, as a race, if we're going to get anywhere, is to heal. We have to heal first. You have to heal your traumas. And that's why, you know, I hear people say, "The Great Awakening." There is no Great Awakening. Absolutely not. If anything, the last 3 years have proven that to me 100%. Because most people are way too damaged. Not to say they can't be healed, they can, but their egos are so thick. You know, and so many people cannot even critically think. But narcissism, they're damaged people. Like I said, I'm not condoning the control and the power that they put over their spouses. I mean, I've worked with people where the spouse has been put into such a dominated position. And what they do as well, which I haven't actually included into this slideshow, but I think it's really important to actually address, is one of the things they do is they love bomb. What a narcissist does often, same as a psychopath, but a narcissist does this too, because if they want a partner, they'll be, and this is the reason people will say, well, it was fine in the beginning, you know, and because what the narcissist does is at the beginning they're very loving. They love bomb. They love bomb a lot, and they almost they make themselves out to be the perfect partner, and then they drip feed the narcissistic tendencies in. So over a year of, I don't know, a span of years, sort of like 10 years, the control, if the person in therapy has been abused, what I do is get them to reflect on it, and they'll always say the same thing. The control crept in slowly. You know, it was lovely at the start, she was lovely at the start, whoever. And then after, you know, a while, more and more of my freedom got taken away. My light got stamped out. They wanted to take my whatever was mine and use it for themselves. All those kind of things that I've spoken of before. And it's done over a very slow period. That is why they don't do it immediately, because they wouldn't even form the relationship. The person would be off running in the other direction, and for good reason. But because they want to dominate that person, they do it slowly. You know, and yeah, that it's love bombing. Yeah, but you know, if you want to read further on the book's absolutely amazing, as is all of his books that I've read so far. I've read quite a lot of them, but there's a few that I need to read just to sort of. He really was a genius. Yeah, that's Narcissism, a new look and a look at the roots. All right, guys. The next video I've got will probably be a tarot one. I'm trying to get back to in a regular sort of beat of doing videos, because I know I leave a huge gap in between, but like I said, this was never going to be a primary thing. It was going to be a secondary thing, because my primary thing is helping people heal. So, all right, guys. See you in the next one. Bye.